In the past, we talked about board meetings, and the one I got several comments on was, can you go over a board meeting beginning to end? And yeah, we can. The first item of business is typically making sure you have a quorum. You cannot conduct business unless you have a quorum of the board there. So if you have a 5-member board, it takes 3 people to be there on the phone or in person. Then once you've got the quorum established, I recommend that you make sure the agenda is qualified. Somebody just, the secretary perhaps might be the one who says, okay, are we all in agreement? This is the agenda we're going to work with today. So that if there is a modification to the agenda, the opportunity is there to remind them to make the adjustment necessary, and then go to open forum. It doesn't mean you can't change the agenda midstream, but whenever you change the agenda, you need to document in the minutes that you did that, and you did it by a majority vote of the board, so that the minutes reflect the fact that you're talking about something that was not on the agenda. When it comes to approving the minutes of the previous meeting, one of the items that has to be on every meeting agenda, what you're looking at is, did the minutes that we wrote properly reflect the business we discussed, the business we took action on? And so as board members, your duty is to look at those minutes and refresh your memory. Did the topics we talked about get on here? And if they didn't, get them corrected, because you want all of your actions to be recorded. Otherwise, down the road, when somebody says, when did that happen? We don't know. And in court, the minutes are the official document. So the court is going to look to the minutes to be the official record of what did or did not take place. When you give the approval of those minutes, what you're saying is, we recognize this is the official record, and now you move on to the next one. You needn't spend a lot of time on it. And for one thing's for sure, don't necessarily want to sit during the meeting using the minutes to find out, by the way, whatever happened with that item in the minutes over here, did that get taken care of? It should be on the agenda if it needs further action. Take it in order when it comes up on the agenda. Use that approval of minutes for that one purpose, to approve the minutes and move on down the agenda. Then there's the treasurer's report. The treasurer's report really can be a very short report. If all the board members are reviewing the report they get in their board pack, the treasurer can simply say, okay, you all can see by the documents you have, here's how much money we have in this account and that account, and here's how our expenses flowed, and maybe highlight this one was over expense, but the reason was X, or this one was under expense because of this reason, and point out a few highlights of things the treasurer noted. And does anybody have any questions on our financial this month? You really want to just accept the report. Any committee report that's brought in, be it landscaping or treasurer's report or architectural report, might be a mere matter of accepting the fact that they've given that report and entered that acceptance into the minutes. You've got committee reports, you've got old business, new business. I'm the guy that doesn't happen to like old business and new business. I prefer that you have discussion items, and all the old and new stuff can flow under that one major heading. But many associations like to keep track of the fact that this is the group that's all unfinished stuff. We started it last month or back when, and it's part of the unfinished business. And here's a grouping of things we've never talked about before that are coming up under new business. In the old days, we took the new business. New business came up at the board meeting. It was new enough that it happened right there that day. We can't do that anymore. Today, we have to have it on the agenda 4 days in advance of the meeting in order to discuss it. So there technically is no new business today, but there certainly is new business that came up since the last board meeting. And that kind of stuff is the new business that goes on the agenda and becomes something you can talk about. As well as all your committee reports, you might want to have a section called calendar. A calendar is a pretty important part because somebody has to keep track of the upcoming events that have to be taken care of. Every association has to have their budget mailing taken care of, and that has to get out in a timely manner, which means getting the budget worked on in a timely manner so it's approved and ready to go in time for the mailing. And there's the audit that gets done every year, and there's a requirement to get that mailed out on time. Well, you can't get it mailed out on time unless the board has authorized management to mail it out in some fashion. So you have to know in advance that that's coming up. Having a calendar to look at every meeting just takes a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Is there anything on the calendar we have to discuss? Everything's good? Move on to the next item. If there's a discussion item on something, how are we coming with the budget, or how are we coming with the new issue of the day? It's on the calendar. It really helps you out. The annual meeting is the big one, because in the annual meeting, you're going to seek new board members by putting out the request for nominations, and then you're going to qualify those nominations, hopefully, make sure that those people who offered to serve on the board are qualified to serve, and then you're going to mail out the ballots, call for a meeting, count the ballots, the secret ballot method has to be used, and all of that takes time. Your meeting might be in, just call it January. You can't start thinking about it in December. In fact, you can't really start thinking about it in November. You need to start thinking about it well before then, because you've got a timeline of things that have to take place. Having a calendar in your board pack so you can review the calendar periodically is very helpful to you. If you have a situation where we talk too long on some subjects and we just don't have enough time to get all the subjects taken care of, you can have a timed agenda where you actually put, we're going to spend 10 minutes on this item, 15 minutes on this item, 3 minutes on this item here, so that you can actually share with your fellow board members, that's the plan. We're not going to waste a lot of time on this issue. We're going to limit ourselves to this much time. Again, we're meeting as a board of directors to talk to each other about the business of the association. We are not here to broadcast to our membership what's going on in the association. They have an opportunity to hear what's going on by monitoring the meeting that you're taking care of business at. So you should position yourselves at a table so you're facing each other as best you can. I recommend a V-shaped table so that as you're speaking to each other, your voice can still project out to the audience even though you're looking at your fellow board members across the table. You want them to be able to hear what's going on. I can assure you, the evidence is clear to me. If you conduct business with each other in a way that they get to see the deliberations you have, they will respect you for what you're doing. And there will be an occasional person who says, why are you talking to each other and not talking to us? It's because they don't understand that the board meeting is there for you to get the business of the association done. It's not there for you to broadcast information out to them. The broadcasting part is just incidental because they get to hear what you're doing. And if they see you actually discussing the pros and cons of a decision you're going to make, it makes them feel good about the fact that you're doing business in a qualified manner, in a proper manner, in a good judgment, business judgment rule type way. So I do recommend that you talk to each other. And I had a board one time that was talking about, in fact, it was an interesting situation where 2 board members were on one side and 3 board members on the other. I don't know if you've ever been in a board like that where you have a 3-to-2 split, but that happens occasionally. And it was interesting to me that new board members got on kind of angry at the old board because they didn't think the old board was doing business correctly. And after we got through talking, they realized, gee, you really are doing business correctly. We just didn't understand it. And they apologized to their fellow board members right there in the room. And if there had been an audience in that room, if the audience could have seen that discussion going on, they would have appreciated that kind of discussion and recognized that it makes sense. They're really talking real stuff. We're not putting on a play, we're not acting, but here's the other side of that. You're on stage. When you're in that boardroom, you are on stage. Your audience is watching every move you make. And so you want to be sure that you keep that in mind. If your fellow board member comes up with a cockamamie idea that you think is just the worst idea in the world, and what in the world are you thinking about presenting that to this board, you don't want to shout back at them and start calling them dirty names. Just be polite and say, well, thank you. I think I disagree with you. Again, being respectful to your fellow board members, but have the conversation that gets the pros and cons of the issues on the table. Your audience will really appreciate the fact that you conduct business that way. So as a board meeting beginning to end, have an open forum, get the business done, and make sure you've got time enough to get the business done.